The meeting. I'm Greg Hammond, on Council Caulfield Ward, chairing the committee. We've got lots of guests tonight, the Residents Republic. Thanks very much for coming along. Before we start the meeting, we will remember that in 2017, on 14th June, 72 of our residents sadly lost their lives in the Grenfell fire. So we'll remember them with 72 seconds of silence. Thank you, Chair. Thanks very much indeed. We have one member of the committee missing. Do we have any apologies from him?
We did have apologies, yes.
Yeah, we have an apology from Councillor Bakhtiar. Thanks very much indeed. So everybody who's expected is present. Do we have any declarations of interest from anybody? We don't. Minutes of the previous meeting, Dory, I think I have a point you wish to raise and put forward.
Yes, thank you.
Outline, please.
On page 4 of the pack, that's second section, item 2, discussing what designation meant if the council doesn't do planning applications in due time. I did ask whether the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government was aware of the cyber attack, which of course made substantial, we took a substantial hit on the IT systems. Everything got held up for months. And the answer was by the officers that the CLG was made aware of it, and there's hope that will be taken into account when considering us or any council for us whether we should be designated or not.
Thanks very much. And Tommy, I think you had a proposed wording change.
Yes, so this would be just at the end of the paragraph 2, page 4 of the minutes. So it would be officers explained that the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government (parentheses MHCLG) was made aware early on of the cyber attack, and we're hopeful that this will be taken into account if considering designation.
Yeah, thanks very much. If everybody's happy, shall I sign the minutes?
Yeah.
Keep on doing that. Okay, so we move on to our first substantive item, which is to welcome TfL to the stand. So, Andrew and Ian, welcome back. Would you like to introduce yourselves to the committee and to our residents?
Yeah, sure. Residents first. I'm Andrew Hatch. I'm Transport for London's local engagement manager, covering Kensington and Chelsea and a few other West London boroughs.
Yeah, and I'm Ian Gillenbeck, in Andrew's team. So I cover kind of West London or West London kind of boroughs. So I'm working very closely with Andrew.
Thanks very much indeed. Is there anything you want to say to us as an introduction? Intro report from our officers on what TfL does and covers.
Yeah,
briefly, but
yeah, absolutely. I think we come to you today in a good moment. Actually, we've been, ever since I've been coming to events like this in this room, we've been talking about lack of funding and there's problems with funding and the challenges around that. Those problems haven't gone away entirely, but we are in a good moment because we have now published a long-term business plan which covers us up to the year 29-30, and that was off the back of a strong capital funding settlement with the government in the spending review last year, which is the kind of deal that we've been angling for many years since COVID. The fact that we've got one now with the government means that we can take a much longer term view and really lock in key investment opportunities over the next 5 years. So that's a really positive story. Off the back of that as well, the operational savings are still continuing to be made and they are still required. So there are still a lot of challenges on the operational funding front. The borough context funding wise, that still remains challenging for us. So through the local implementation improvement program, the LIPS, which RBKC applied to TfL for funding to do projects that will help us deliver the Mayor's transport strategy. Just to give you the context of the financial challenges there. Pre-COVID, we were funding boroughs to the tune of north of 200 million per year. And now we are looking to fund boroughs around the tune of just over 90 million. And, you know, we're trying to achieve the same level of change with that less amount than we were before COVID. So borough partners are more integral than ever. So it's absolutely vital that we've got good relations with the likes of yourselves and borough officers. There's a couple in the audience tonight.
Just within that context as well, the ridership levels, again, not quite at the same level as pre-COVID. So that's the kind of context, but it's still increasing, but still not quite those 2019 levels. So that's the challenge we're still facing, which also sets that context around financial as well.
Great, thanks very much. So as you'll remember from last year, and some of the committee will remember, I'm going to do it thematically, and we're going to start with tubes, and then we'll do all questions tube wise, then we'll do something else and so on and go through. Particularly going to start with the central line, because there are issues and several residents here about that. So Dory, I'm going to ask you to ask your question about central line first, and see if any members of the committee want to expand on that, and then we'll go into other subjects.
Thank you very much. I mean, the basic question is, the noise, as you know, has been aggravating lots of people. I think you've had messages from the residents, I think one's here now, and from us, from officers and from me. Basically, obviously something had to be done. You felt that the pads, these silencing pads, had to be changed. The basic question is, why wasn't this done all in one fell swoop? Why is there such a gap that people are having their sleep disturbed every night?
Before Andrew comes in on that, because I've got a few people who want to ask a similar question, I'm going to go around the room and get some perspectives on that, and then you can come back to me in one go. It's the most efficient way. Does anybody want to talk about tube noise, particularly in the committee? Other than me, obviously Dory's posed it. Joanna, your councillor not on the committee, so Joanna, do you want to raise that?
Nice to meet you. Yes, I mean, it's very much what, as Dory says, residents started asking in about November or December, why was the noise, it had we all noticed different noises. I personally have noticed it. It's like a train coming through my kitchen. It's even worse at night. And I think through FOI requests, people have discovered it's because you've removed the noise damping pads that had been installed 8 or 10 years ago. Forgive me if my timeline's not right. And as a result, there's then been the subsequent question, which is, are they being replaced? And I gather another FOI has said, yes, they are being replaced. But as Dory says, there's been no communication with either the council or with residents. And so we're having to pick up and firefight as opposed to essentially understand why we're in this position and what we're doing to get out of it. And are the new pads that are being proposed, will they have the same good positive impact on reducing that noise, or have they not been tested? Because what we don't want to do is finally get a half-baked solution that actually causes another problem.
Yeah. We've got some residents here who also want to add something, so I'm going to go around this way. So Sophia first, first.
Yes, if I may. Well, I've already written to Andrew about this, and we've identified, I think, a dozen streets, and a few more have come up since then, people complaining. I just want to emphasize that this is really causing misery to people. I mean, it used to be just the basement and the ground floor, but now it's reaching bedroom areas. And I'm getting harrowing stories of how people in them just can't sleep. So basically what we want is for something to be done about it ASAP, however, whatever means.
Thank you, Sophia. Then gentleman back to
Yes, so I'm a resident. I actually I've been a resident since 2014, beginning of Ladbroke Road, that's where I live. We moved away to Oxford for a couple of years. We came back last November. In the meantime, I had hearing devices put in Oxford. So I came back, and before, you could barely hear anything. Maybe just, you wouldn't really notice it in our lower ground floor. And I could hear it in our bedroom. And I thought it was the hearing aids or I was going mad, but then I heard everybody else having the same problem. So I didn't have a recording of it before, but now I hear it at night, in the morning, 5 o'clock, it starts stressing me out. And I can hear the train stop. You can actually hear the train and exactly what's going on. So it's quite disturbing. And then I picked up from the Ladbroke Association some of what's going on. That's why I'm here today.
So if you,
Yeah, thank you. Very similar, but what's interesting for my house on Ladbroke Road is I'm aware that there were noise issues in 2018, which were fixed by these pads that were installed. We had no noise issues in 2018. So I feel really bad for people who have noise issues now, because it must be worse than it was in 2018. So, you know, I mean, and it's weird how, I mean, just to reiterate what people have said, I've got, you know, my bedroom's on the top floor, but it's the noisiest on the top floor. I don't really understand how that can be. I think the walls get thinner as they built these houses. The walls get thinner as well, or something. So it really is a big issue, but I mean, just as everyone's just really said.
thank you, Kieran. I presume you're not wanting to talk Central Line, though. The gentleman in
The question is, back in 2018, TfL were very good. They sent around sound engineers. I live in Horbury, sound engineers. They put up equipment and said this is unacceptable. And they said, we're going to do something about it. I said, but I've lived here in this house 46 years and never heard a peep. What's happened? And they said, oh, well, the rolling stock is very old. The tracks are in a disgraceful state. We skin the rails, but it doesn't seem to do the slightest bit of good. And we're not changing them anytime soon, i.e. the rolling stock or tracks. But we're going to put these shock absorbers, he called them, underneath the rails, and it worked. And lo and behold, there was no noise until I think it was about October time last year. So suddenly I thought, hello, I can hear this. And it all came back again. And subsequently we learned they've been taken out with a view to putting something better in. But the question is when? And why take stuff out if it's working until you're ready to replace? That's the question I want to ask.
Okay, so you heard the perspective of all residents, Bembridge wards, experience from different parts of the ward. So what's going on then?
So, well, first and foremost, I just want to apologise for the experiences that you're having, and that's, you know,
It's worse than it was.
I'm hearing that, yeah, and I was present for some of those meetings. Actually, there was a meeting I attended in a pub at Notting Hill Gate with a bunch of residents in 2018. I remember being at that. It was a really well attended meeting. I remember the strength of feeling in the room then. So I am familiar with this. I think the key thing for us is that the PV, so it's called Padroll Vanguard. They're the names of, that's the name of the technology, the PV pads. Just call them the pads. They were removed in June 2025 last year, and one of the reasons for the removal was because it causes the corrugation of the rail to happen much more rapidly than when the pads are not there, which is a problem for us because it damages trains, it causes noise above in properties, but also on the train as well. So there was sort of three reasons why the pads were removed. The curious aspect here is, and the reason why I can't be super conclusive about the cause of the noise in your properties is, the curious thing is the pads were removed in June and the complaints started around the times that you just outlined, you know, late autumn, early winter and throughout the winter. So the corrugation, according to our engineering teams, is that the corrugation levels haven't really significantly increased since then, and it wasn't bad wasn't too bad to begin with, but we had to remove the pads to protect the track infrastructure. So what we are going to commit to doing is, and I think you mentioned about people previously coming into properties and taking noise measurements. We want to get to the bottom of what's causing this noise, because there may be other factors at play. Might not be as cut and dry as just the pads were removed, the noise has increased. those two things may be related, but we need to do more investigation. There may be other reasons at play for ground-borne vibrations passing up through people's properties as it was in 2018.
I assume there's a lot more digging out of basements. That doesn't help, I'm sure.
So, well, certainly we know in this part of the world that does happen. You know, basements get excavated, and that can have a dramatic effect on how vibrations travel through the ground. And again,
Let me just say something.
Let's just I'm just going to let Andrew finish his answer. I will bring you back into supplementaries. So we'll just hear from Andrew now.
and that's not me saying that is the reason. We're still looking into that, but we are committed to doing more readings in people's homes and finding out the source of this noise, and then putting a solution in place.
So how should residents put themselves forward to get one of these readings done in their homes?
So they're already in touch with our noise and vibration team at our contact centre. I know that because I've seen a lot of the emails with a chap called Derek Wilson, who's a really knowledgeable and experienced person in this field. And he is the person to continue going to. Some of that email traffic comes through to me, and I always get on that urgently where possible. But we know personally the engineers that will be coming to your homes, and they are as committed as we are to getting to the bottom of what's caused this sudden uptick in noise. Because we agree it's not acceptable. It must be absolutely horrendous. So apologies again from me.
Okay, we're going to go to committee. So if this committee's got supplementaries, then councillors not in committee, then residents. So Dory first.
It's an interesting question you raised about, or an interesting point about basements, but there'd been no change in basements for years now, because the deep basements were stopped in other boroughs, but we were not the first, but one of the early boroughs to stop deeper basements. So there's no change, but it's still a very interesting point you raised. And also, I just want to add, there's a wide radius of streets that are affected, not just a few very close to the station.
Yeah, and Occam's razor, as you say, it might not be basements, but we need to rule that out in order to get to the right answer and the right solution.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joanna.
So were they all removed at one time, or was it gradual? Because in KNC, we tend to have a large number of our residents who go away for the month of August. So in terms of picking up noise, I think there's also an element of windows opening. Somebody had mentioned groundwater and whether that actually causes a noise difference. And I know summer was relatively dry last year, whereas we've had quite a sort of wet winter. I don't know whether you're looking at all these things in the mix, but for me, my concern is the timeline. This has already gone on, and how long it's going to go on for. So I've got emails from residents. I know I've had the noise usage team out to at least one in order to have a look at it, but you've got nothing to measure it against. You didn't come and measure my property last time. How do you know what's an acceptable level of noise as opposed to what's increased? Where's the benchmark?
There are parameters within which the engineering teams that take the readings work within, but there's also a human element as well. This isn't the only place in London where we take readings, and the environments are different all across London, depending on the location that you're taking the readings at. So they don't just look at the number and say, yes, this qualifies, or no, it doesn't qualify. The impact on the quality of life of our neighbours, and that's what we see residents as our neighbours, is important to us. It's critical. So, please rest assured, it's not just as simple a matter as taking a reading and then putting it through a flow chart. There is a person behind that and behind that process. And like I said, it's in our interest to solve this problem as well, because it causes a health and safety concern for our staff. Our trained drivers as well are suffering in the tunnel, which is one of the reasons why the pads were removed in the first place, as well as reducing the rate of the deterioration of the track.
I'm going to bring Simon for supplementary, and the gentleman at the back was next, and then Sophia.
Thank you, Andrew. It was very interesting you mentioned, because obviously there's quite a major conflict going on between the users of the trains and the RMT, I think, who've brought up the issue of the damage being caused to staff. And that's what's caused the pad to be taken away in many places and on many lines. Are there more pads that are likely to be taken away? Because obviously we're talking about an area of the central line, but there's a lot of other lines which have got these pads on, which may be in Kensington and Chelsea as well. So is this a wider and ongoing problem? That's part one, because there are other lines which have them. And the second is that there's, I was reading there's an alternative on trial, which is Delcor 167. I don't know how long the trial has been going on, and whether that trial is successful at reducing noise for residents as well as users and drivers of the trains.
So the Velcor system is the one that is being looked into as the replacement. So I think the trials were successful. I don't have the data to hand on the impact on residents versus the impact on in the train passengers and staff, but I can certainly look into that. As I say, I want to provide some reassurances without overextending, because I haven't got that data, but it's in our interest for the Velcor system to do the same thing that the pads did before. So I'll look into the outcome of the trial and see if I can share that with the committee, if that's helpful afterwards. With regards to the wider question about other locations, I don't know that. I've been focused on Notting Hill Gate for tonight.
Please do share the results when you've got them with us. We much appreciate it. But I think gentleman at the back had a supplement.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make a quick point. I know I'm just talking about my house, but the speed at which it got worse, which was for us, which, I mean, I know we were probably lucky once it's not as loud as probably some other properties, but January 3rd, my wife thought I was going mad that I was hearing things because she couldn't hear. January 13th, we could hear every train. I mean, it could be groundwater has just changed suddenly, but considering you've taken the pads out, I mean, I'm really happy there's measurements taking place and stuff, but considering pads were taken out and there was a rapid deterioration just at that time, I mean, you know, I'm just fearful that we're going to do a lot of investigation here. The second thing that worries me is these other pads, because the emails that we got from TfL said these new pads are going in. And I appreciate you don't have the data, but my worst case scenario is that TfL spends, I don't know, millions of pounds putting these new pads in that make it great for the drivers. And then we've done the work, and then we're left for this for the rest of our lives, or whatever, decades, or I don't know how long it lasts. So, you know, and so therefore my third question is there any chance we can just put these old pads back?
I think the third question is quite unlikely, to be honest with you. Because of the impact that the noise in train was having on customers and on staff, and the fact that it increases the rate of deterioration of the track, which is an additional business cost and a safety issue for us, and it damages the rolling stock as well. You know, central line rolling stock has been an issue for us the last 2 or 3 years. So anything that exacerbates that is something that we're focused on.
Right, but you know, like customers go twice a day and have 30 seconds or 10 seconds or 3 seconds or 1 second of noise.
Yeah.
You have to appreciate some people here live here for 30 years, and it's every 3 minutes for 15 hours. I mean, because I don't know, but I'm reading between the lines that drivers want the noise gone. We're going to change these pads. Now we've got a problem. We're going to investigate. Maybe it's basement, and we're just left with this, and we're going to get some new pads that nobody knows what they're going to do.
Yeah, I appreciate the I guess the impression of inertia with the investigations point, but you know, for us, the pads came out in June, and then the issues really seem to manifest several months later. So it doesn't seem like a direct correlation. So that does need investigating before money is thrown at a problem. But there is a solution in the offing, the Velcor system, and you know, we are committed to installing that as soon as possible.
But we don't know whether this is a solution.
Just bring in Sophia now, because we can't make it a two-way.
Yes, I mean, one thing that strikes me is the capriciousness of this. I mean, I live within 50 yards of the underground line as it goes under Holland Park Avenue. I hear nothing. My neighbours 30 yards up the road are suffering, and another one round the corner. I don't know whether you've thought of mapping where the noise appears, because it's something that might tell you something. On the other hand, I wouldn't want these investigations to go on forever. What we really need is a solution urgently.
And on that point, are all residents in the room in direct communication, or the affected ones in direct communication with TfL? If you,
I don't think so, no.
And that's another
Because
issue. Some sort of leafleting of all the affected streets would help a lot, I think.
So we went out via 2 residents associations and asked them to get in touch with councillors. I've got a handful, but I've got more through my personal email. And the Labrador Association has been able to identify streets. So there's an element of, no, we know we're not in touch with people.
Yeah, thank you. So on the base, I mean, the correlation, June, or I echo what you said. I mean, it seems to be probably the most likely course, but I think we can probably admit that without spending lots of money. We had a basement next door to us. They lowered by about 1 meter 3 or 4 years ago. No problem at all. So that didn't affect it at all, even though they've lowered it by about 1 meter. So I don't think it's basement, my personal opinion. And then noise readings, again, I think if people don't know to go and have a noise reading, so they need to be told if you want a noise reading, some leaflet or something. And also my question is, what can you tell from a noise reading? I mean, you obviously didn't do one before. Is there a way to divine from hearing the noise what the problem is? Because if not, great, you can come and hear my noise. Fantastic. But is there a way to, what do the engineers tell from the noise? Oh, it's that sort of noise. That means it's groundwater. What can you tell a little bit of the detail, not all the detail,
Yeah,
but how that kind of works?
It's very much the latter. So it's not just a binary reading of decibels. They will be able to use these investigative tools to identify the type of noise, whether it's ground-borne vibrations or something else,
right,
and the location, the source of the noise as well. And so that helps them to build up a map of the worst affected areas, and then hone in on, okay, it's likely to be the track, or it's likely to be some other issue, water, ground-borne vibrations, excavations, what have you. But it's important, so I agree with you, we need a solution, but I think let's walk to the right one and not run to the wrong one. That's the important aspect of getting these investigations done. They are underway, and it's something that if our team feel that they need to do an investigation on a certain street, we will proactively make a request addresses on that street.
it's clearly a very important subject tonight. I mean, we could talk about it all night and we're not going to be able to. So I'm going to draw a line under the central line now, and I mean, I'd certainly encourage.
When the lady is central line.
Yes, I don't know, Mammy, you just come in. Are you interested in central line by any chance?
Yes, apologies for being so late. I was stuck. I came from the other side of London. Yes, I live on Ludlow Square, and I'm very affected by the tube noise, by the removing of the pads, and I'm wondering what's being done about it and why we weren't consulted before the pads were removed.
We've had a long discussion about it, so I'm not going to repeat this discussion.
Of course, yes.
It is, but I mean, I'm glad you've come and you've actually said that, because that's another personal experience that's been added. But we are recording a meeting on YouTube, so you can see later on what's been
Absolutely.
Thank you. But I'm going to draw stumps at that point on this particular subject, because we have a long discussion on it, and I think we'll go on and talk about other tube matters and see if any of the commission's got other tube matters, and then we'll go to other subjects at 10. Anything on the tubes now? No, Dorian on the tubes.
Other tube matters in the report.
Well, whatever you want to talk about for TfL from the underground.
Yeah, so it's in the report. It's on page 22 for those who've got it. Underground step-free access, where we're just wondering about any updates on the feasibility of step-free access in, Ladbroke Grove, Glastonbury Road, Notting Hill Gate underground stations. For Notting Hill Gate underground, I've got a specific question. Well, because of certain things that went on before the construction project, but I think from the street level down to ticket wall, I know nothing about it, but my feeling is it could be very difficult to do that. But the question is, could we get it from the ticket wall, it's not very far down to at least the tracks, get free access? That's the question. It would be very helpful if we could have it sometime in the future.
So, well, let's start with Notting Hill Gate then. Unfortunately, we don't have any current plans to do a feasibility study for a step-free access scheme at Elton Gilgate, and this is because of the nature of the land above the station. Deliverability is extremely constrained here. Land beside the District and Circle Line platforms, we don't own that land. So that's, a major hurdle. Northern end of the land is occupied by large buildings. They would need redeveloping, lifts installed there. That's, a private enterprise. It's not something that we hold sway over. There was a previous plan to introduce step-free access, which you'll probably remember. That was on the eastern side. Unfortunately, that's also no longer viable either, because there was a change of the site ownership there, and the new developer, I think it was approved, but they're not going to be building lifts. We needed them to do that in order to deliver step-free access to Elton Gilgate. In addition, the Central Line platforms and escalators, they are directly beneath the main road. So that would be a major engineering complexity, shall we say. Digging up the road, closing that road for an extended period of time would add an extra layer and enormous costs to do any kind of step-free scheme there. In addition, we might need a step-free scheme to the Central Line may require a brand new entrance on the north side, possibly using old lift shafts, but that would be an extremely high cost and highly challenging project to deliver. So it's not something in the current environment that, financially, that like I outlined, we have committed to major schemes in the business plan, South Kensington. I'll get onto that in a moment. We are now trying to focus on the most deliverable and viable schemes, short and medium term, to move the dial on public transport use, etc., and accessibility. Elton Gilgate is somewhere near the bottom of that list, unfortunately, because of all those challenges. It is a significantly challenging site to deliver step-free access to.
Before you move on, sorry, may I just ask, just go back to that point. I appreciate from the surface down to Ticket Hall, I can see the problem. I'm well aware of the problems. You mentioned east side, I think it was south side, but it doesn't matter. I agree with you. It would have been in the private towers and everything, but from the Ticket Hall downwards, that's the point. You could do something there.
Yeah, we did a consultation on step-free access in general, and what we found was that we get a lot of qualitative feedback as well as just quantitative feedback, like yes here, no there, my local station. Essentially, everyone wants the local station to be step-free, but we found a lot of good qualitative feedback at that consultation. And what we found was that people they don't want partial step-free. They don't want half-baked solutions. They even want it to be fully step-free, so they know where they are with that, and they can plan their journeys around it. But if there's a step-free solution that sort of gets you to the ticket hall, or from the ticket hall to the street level, then you're still going to convey people safely either up to street level or down to the platform, and it's an extra layer. We're trying to remove layers and make travel spontaneous for people with accessibility needs. So an interesting idea, but it's not really got any legs in the world that we're currently operating in. Ladbroke Grove. This one does remain on our radar, and that's primarily, I suppose, because of the Kensal Canal side project and the promise of funding from that project towards a step-free scheme here. There's no concrete plans at the moment to sort of wipe the dust off the feasibility plan study that we already did here. That was in 2021. But so we are, we're looking for clarity on the level of investment that we could possibly get from the Kensal Canal side scheme, and we also need some clarity on whether RBKC's £7.5 million offer is still on the table. All of these factors would need to come into alignment for us to say, okay, yeah, let's go for it. Let's do another study here. There is a preferred option at Ladbroke Grove, and that would be that would require the ticket hall and staircase to be reconfigured and a brand new subway built to enable a lift to access both platforms. But so that's sort of the semi-positive news, but the more, bringing everyone back down to earth, the cost in 2021 was already around 31 million, and that will be significantly higher now, 26, 27, due to, events. So significant challenges there financially as well. Latimer Road, no current plans at the moment to look at that. Again, very challenging from an engineering point of view with the layout of the station, the staircases leading to the eastern ends of the platform. makes building lists extremely difficult there. We have to build on or above the third party owned property. That's another barrier financially as well. So, land take would potentially be a scenario there. So again, that's somewhere in the middle of the remaining stations that we are looking at. But let's talk about South Kensington, because that has now been confirmed in our business plan, which is a really important milestone for this project. RBKC have and continue to be a vital partner in that, with the pledge of up to £12 million towards the delivering of this scheme. And this really speaks to the partnership model that we increasingly have to inhabit to deliver schemes on this scale. Speaking against the finances, we're always looking for third party funding. So the funding for the delivery of this scheme is going to be key now. But there's concrete things happening at South Ken, which is really exciting. We've got planning consent for the station itself. The business plan has confirmed the funding for it, including those pledged third-party contributions. And early this month, our Programme and Investment Committee detailed design funding was confirmed for the project for next financial year, 26-27. So that itself is a key milestone. So yeah, hopefully we're all stars are aligning for South Ken, and we can bring step-free access to that station's 30 million customers that go through it every year. And it will be the first time it's step-free in its almost 160-year history. So it's absolutely vital.
I'll just pick up on that. So your expected timeline for build out South Ken is what? Because it doesn't sound like you've closed down any finances yet.
Correct. Yeah, we're not saying a concrete timeline for construction at this point. We're taking each financial year by each financial year, and the focus for next year is detailed design. But the funding for that has been approved by our estimate committee.
You can afford to design it then. And then
correct.
And how does this relate to the around station development that was given planning permission on appeal just over 2 years ago?
Yeah.
And which proposed partial step free. Obviously, you had to do some prep work for it, but if we delivered partial step free in the station, and I think you're now proposing full step free in this plan. Look, how do the two projects interrelate?
So the two projects, one can't exist without the other, frankly. The around station development will unlock the additional level of funding that we need to deliver step free access. We won't get step free access without the around station development. Places for London and Native Land are going to be delivering new commercial spaces and new homes above the station. And from an engineering point of view, there'll be a new entrance on, I think it's Pelham or Thurlow, whichever one is on the north side. I always get them mixed up. Thurlow. And we will be safeguarding the future delivery of step-free access to the Piccadilly line as well. Although that is not, integrated into the first phase, which is District and Circle, which was always the original plan to do that first.
Sorry, it's my understanding that what you just committed to was a design including the Piccadilly line.
Correct. Yeah, so we're safeguarding the future delivery of Piccadilly line step-free access.
Okay. Let's carry on with two questions. So Laura first, and we'll just carry on around.
I have a couple of questions. One is kind of relating to that. In the report, it says work would need to begin before December 2026. So could you give us actually a time frame? And also, if you're talking about there's a gap in the budget, how much is the gap and how are you going to close it?
So the second question is a really big question, isn't it? So yeah, the 2026 aspect is just like with any planning permission, you've got 3 years to discharge that. So some form of physical activity would have to take place at the station before the end of this year to satisfy that. So what we're looking to do soon is work with, because we know that you've had your cyber incident, we know how that feels, by the way, and that you're getting on your feet now, but that your planning portal has got a massive backlog. So we're going to be asking KLC officers to work with us to urgently expedite the stuff that we need to do to get on site before the 2026 deadline is up. So, but that's a piece of work that's going to be taken forward by officers. As I sit here before you now, the funding gap is significant. I off the top of my head, I don't know what the gap is right now. Well, that's published somewhere else, I think, and I'll share that after the meeting. I don't want to, quote the wrong figure tonight and then it's a different figure. So what we are trying to do is raise the profile of the scheme and get people interested and really move the dial in terms of the national significance of this scheme, because we feel the investment then will come. KNC has already offered to put his hand in his pocket, which is gratefully, grateful for that. We obviously will need to provide a significant chunk of the money as well, but we are going to need third-party funding to make this happen, as we do with every step-free scheme. So South Kensington is not unique in that. So it's a model that we're familiar with, that works, and so that's why it's absolutely vital that we make the case for it. And KNC are going to be a really critical partner in helping us to make the case for it as well.
Okay, so just got another one. But when you know the timeframe, can it be easily accessible for residents so we know what we're working with? And then also on top of that, there's been some temporary closures, particularly at Holland Park, I think 14. What were the main reasons for that? And can we prevent that in the future? Also, there's a timeframe for new trains. Can you give me more information on that?
Yeah, so temporary station closures. Yeah, this came up last year, didn't it? And so I think we were still suffering from our cyber incident last year and we didn't have the data, but we do have the data now. So what I can tell you is that last year, for the last year for which we have full reporting data, that's 2023-24, we had at Lancaster Gate and Holland Park 185 closures of this nature. In 25-26, that came down to around 160 in total. So it has come down. The closures are almost always around the start of traffic or the end of traffic. And that's very early in the morning or very, very late in the evening. Only a very small handful of closures take place during peak or midday hours, the height of traffic. And this is essentially a staffing issue. The good news is we are in the process now. They may already be in post of onboarding a new intake of staff to cover this group of stations. Because the way it works with closures like this, I think I explained in the committee last year, each group of tube stations is lumped together in a strategically sort of ring group of stations. Lancaster Gate and Holland Park are together with Shepherd's Bush. And that's key because Shepherd's Bush is an important hub, interchange hub. So when there are staff shortages, that's where the staff are funneled towards, not towards, which is unfortunate for local people. They're funneled away from these stations, especially the likes of Holland Park, which is a really small station, really simply laid out. And we need the staff more at Shepherd's Bush. But I said last year that we were looking to address that with an intake of staff. That has happened. We've recruited, and they were, as of late January, early Feb, being onboarded. So we're hoping to see that 150 figure drop even more this year.
Thank you. And I will point out, obviously, the committee members were the same last year.
Yeah, quite.
Laura and Thirty Wilson, so that's the first time she was there. I think that's your job. Well, you've got some two questions.
Yeah.
There was an outstanding question.
Oh, sorry, did you read this one out?
Yeah, new trains. Oh wait, lost it. That's not too many.
New trains.
New trains, timeframes.
Yeah.
And the benefits, whatever, from which ones, and are they faster? Are they? What will they do? Why are they good? Why do we need them?
Why do we need them? Yeah. Well, you take one look at the Bakerloo line rolling stock, right? And there's your answer. Why we need them. The new, talking about Piccadilly line trains here. They're going to be walk-through, air conditioned, all the bells and whistles that you would expect if you've been on an Elizabeth line train with digital information on board. They will be, so that's all the sort of aesthetic, cosmetic stuff, but more importantly, they're more reliable. They integrate the signalling system better, so they will, faster journeys, more frequent trains, so we can put more trains on the track at the same time, which means an uptick in the overall volume of people we can carry on the railway. So there has been a slight delay in the delivery of not in the delivery of the trains, but in the work that we're currently doing to integrate the trains onto the system. So we were previously looking at a date of around, was it summer this year to December. That window's moved sort of 2 quarters back to December 26 and June 27 for the full rollout of these Piccadilly line trains. The reason for that are manifold. This is an extremely complex engineering project. Some of the station works and track works that it's taking place is on 150-year-old infrastructure, certainly some that's at least 100 years old. So some of the ground conditions and conditions in general are found to be worse than we anticipated. So that creates delays. But the work is going well. That the system integration testing began last September. That's going well. So we are working hard, and we're very confident that that new window will be met. So that should happen within the revised December to June next year window. You'll start to see new Piccadilly line trains.
Central line as well. We're reconditioning the fleet with Central line stock as well, because again, as Andrew's already mentioned, in a poor state. So we're reconditioning those on a kind of phase basis, but again, aesthetically, there's going to be a lot of lighting, refurb of seating, etc. as well. You'll know we've got graffiti issue along on the Central line as well, so deterrents for that as well. So but you'll gradually start to see new, refurbished Central line stock as well.
Thank you. So, a few questions.
Yeah, I have one question, but it might have other questions. It's Douglas e-bikes.
No, we're on the underground, so we're going to do 2 questions, then come back to bikes. Councillors not on the committee on the tube, and then residents. So I'm going to go to Kieran, then.
Chair, so this is actually what I came to ask about, but whilst we're at it, one of the things, my nearest station is West Brompton. One of the biggest issues we have at that station is the very poor performance on the Mildmay line. And it's been on for quite a while, and TfL is actually really doing about it, or about informing passengers of what some delays are. And to be honest, the only thing we've ever had there is just the change of the name, which has been pretty useless, really. What are the plans to improve the performance on the Mildmay line?
We'll have to take that away because we haven't prepared for questions on the Mildmay line.
Right.
But if you want to stick around after and give me specifics about the time to
finish. It's pretty much, say if I go to Westfield, go at any time of the day, it's quicker to walk sometimes. It's that bad because there's often cancellations, delays.
So it's cancellations and delays.
Yeah.
So perhaps we could have a written answer on what's going on the Mildmay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Gentlemen, back up.
Very small follow-up question on the Holland Park closures. I quite often use that station and arrive and it's closed. I have to go then walk somewhere else. I typically use an app to just check things are working. Often I've actually been on that train and it hasn't stopped. I haven't been told it's not going to stop, so I go to Shepherd's Bush, I come back again, and I just wondered whether it's possible somehow either to integrate with the apps that say that's closed. Now I have checked on a TfL app in the past. Well, I've never just inside checked to see if I should have checked. There's no information saying it's closed, so I've just wasted 20 minutes or whatever it has to be. So that's just I don't know if there's any comment on that or anything can be done about that. We're going to close the station. It's quite helpful today. We walk 10 minutes to the station.
Yeah, no, I totally get the frustration. The problem is there's such short notice closures, right? That there often isn't the time to get that information filtered through to the data that we share with the likes of Citymapper and Google. It's just sometimes the station will close with 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes notice. Yeah. And it's just not really feasible. With the technology we currently have, it's not fully integrated with the customer information system. It is quite crude in terms of the information that can be conveyed to people when this happens.
And drivers tell you if you're on the train.
The drivers should.
They tell you should do Notting Hill Gate, please, or otherwise it's too late.
That's the point that can be improved. Absolutely, they should be doing better on that.
And I think as we sort of described it, literally kind of area based on teams, and so they're probably on the ground trying to get staff to Holland Park within. I've been on the Central line. I think it was earlier this year. Lancashire gate was closed, and then I came back. I think sort of half an hour later, and it was open. So it's kind of it's really sort of shifted. But hopefully, as we described, hopefully that problem is going to minimise.
Okay, we'll move away from the tube. Tim, I'm going to come to you for questions to TfL on a different subject, please.
So for me, the questions are related on the junctions around Earls Court. So
We're going to go on roads now, so
yeah.
great.
So the West Cromwell Road and Warwick Junction, and then the Warwick Road or Brompton Junction. Also last year, we actually had a meeting together, and I think you were actually there, Andrew, together with the developers from the Earls Court Development Company, and you were talking about those junctions in the meeting. I think you guys said that you were looking to redevelop those junctions towards 2028, I think it was. But we're also expecting that to be the time when the CTMP is going to be in place, and we're going to get quite a lot of the construction traffic going through Earls Court across all the red routes across the area. So, which is quite a concern because we don't want to have those junctions open with all that traffic going through it. Is that still the case at the plan as it is now?
Yeah, so talking about the Warwick, Brompton, Finborough junction, the one with the little triangle of land outside the Tesco. Yeah, that summer 28 is still when we're looking to, our intended build timeframe for that. With regards to that's compatibility with the CTMP for Earls Court, my planning colleagues informed me that the CTMP hasn't been fully developed by the developers, so we're still waiting to see what their plan is with that. And of
Are
course,
you talking to the developers about that as well?
yes, we are, of course. Yeah, our planning team has regular touch points with the Earls Court developers, because Places for London is one of the partners there. This has come up several times. We've tried to provide reassurances that it's sort of our bread and butter, managing construction projects like this, managing the flow of traffic around local road network. If there are any concerns flagged vis-a-vis, why are we building, we shouldn't be building our scheme at the same time because of these clashes or, a build for congestion in the area, then we would move it. It's not in our interest to clog up the Earls Court roadway system, certainly. But having said that, it is important that those improvements do come forward for safety reasons. I think there's 3 movements there for pedestrians, and 2 of them are not signalised at this point, which is fairly ropey. So we do need to do the scheme, but it needs to work in conjunction with the Earls Court project.
The other, yes. So the other junction I mentioned,
And that was the Warwick.
the Warwick Road, Cromwell Road one, is on the big Tesco.
Big Tesco, yeah. So this is sort of a chicken and egg for us, because we've got a whole corridor plan for the Warwick Road, Finborough Road, the whole corridor. We've got, for many years, we've had plans to reduce the speed, make it safer and less intimidating for pedestrians, through, all the usual kind of changes that you would expect from us. Big Tesco development is key because we need to know the final state of that, and the Earls Court development, what the final state of that is going to be, and is that compatible with what we're planning. So we need some of those elements to come online first before we can finalise and develop our schemes along this corridor.
On that one, because in the end, they're literally building the Tesco development now, like the building is going up and it's going high. So you don't have the final data on that.
Yeah, so it's the minutiae in terms of it's more the Earls Court side of things,
right,
and how that might change the pattern of movement through the area, because the Earls Court development is a significant trip generator. I think we've already shared our plans with Linda, and certainly Linda Wade and yourselves by email in the past. We're looking at simplifying the movements for pedestrians. Certainly the north-south movement is extremely intimidating over what is essentially feels to me like a motorway.
Yeah,
absolutely. So we're absolutely committed to improving that junction, and it's not something that we need to be dragged to the table on. I think the glacial pace has been because of the other significant changes in the area, and sort of waiting for those cards to be played first, so that like I said on the tube noise issue, we want to walk to the right solution rather than build something now and have to rip it out in 10 years because Earls Court is because that's a 20-year build phase, Earls Court. So we need to know what their final intentions are.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you're waiting for data from those developers, but
what is your current estimated timeframe for that junction?
I don't have an intended build window right this minute. It will be in the next 3 years, 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
Hopefully I can be more accurate on that in the next 6 to 12 months.
We'll carry on round the
Questions
committee.
on the roads, but I'll come back to that.
Yeah, we'll carry on around the committee roads questions, so TfL road story, well,
Yeah, sort of roads.
well, cycling, no, not cycling,
Roads,
roads.
yes.
Your road.
Yes, well, thanks, John. So around the Chelsea embankment.
Apologies, thank you.
Do you, what, Chelsea embankment, obviously the other roads, do you have the casualty rates in the past 5 years? And also I know you've done some work, and so like, and there's more work to come, All the design proposals and timelines, when will they be published? And then what's the funding for these schemes? And also, this is sort of an aside, but it's in Chelsea embankment in particular, is prone to sort of flooding and things like that. And obviously, as a red route, there's like, you know, gullies that need to be like sucked out or whatever. How often do you check the roads, and how often do you maintain those roads? Because it does have a direct effect on pedestrians, cars, and everything else. So those are my main kind of ones. And also, are you planning on sort of speed violations as well? Have you recorded how many they were? And are you planning on adding any more speed cameras or limits or something on some of those roads? That's a lot. Thank you.
Could you just relist those schemes?
Yes. So we're talking about Chelsea embankment. You've done some work there already. However, I don't know if it's finished because it doesn't seem finished. Yeah, sort of around Beaufort Street and
Yeah, the
around the
Battersea
embankment.
Bridge safety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's still work to be done there.
No, it's finished.
Yeah. Okay. How often do you sort of monitor that? You know, to see how well it works? Because I don't know, it seems still a bit messy. But anyway, okay, we'll leave that. Let's focus on the other things. Do you have a list of sort of casualty rates in the last 5 years around the Chelsea embankment area, and also speeding violations? How do you have a number for last year or whatever, or your latest number? And will you be adding additional cameras and speed limits around those areas? And how often do you inspect and clean the gullies or any other hazardous areas on your red routes?
Yeah. So collision data is publicly available. That's published and updated regularly, and I can reshare the link with Greg after the meeting. So you can interrogate that at your leisure. One of the main drivers for the Battersea scheme was the fatal collision at that junction.
Yeah.
Of the death of a jogger who was running the road there over the southern arm of that junction, early 2021. So that's why we brought forward urgently those plans, and that was the primary driver for that scheme. It's a safety scheme.
Yeah.
In terms of speed violations, I don't know the answer to that. I can try to find out for you after. That's important.
Well,
We're not taking any more, so I'm going, in the interest of time, I'm going to.
okay, but you haven't finished
Yeah,
answering.
yeah, we need to hear the rest of the answer, but I'm not going to take supplementaries now,
Fine.
because we are running out of time. So go ahead, Andrew, if you had something else about it.
Yeah, so the gullies, I think Councillor Tharcities wrote to me about this a few weeks ago. Yeah, the gullies are inspected every couple of weeks, at least once a month. The issue that we found, and I think I know the location you're referring to, is that there's a Thames Water main, which is directly impacting the performance of our gullies. The problem is not our gullies, the problem is the Thames Water infrastructure there. So that's something that our asset operations team is liaising with Thames Water about.
It's not an addition, it's just answer the other bit, sorry. Will you be adding additional speeding cameras for speeding violations on any of those routes in any time soon?
So, yeah, so we're not, at the moment, static speed cameras, we're not looking to expand the static speed camera network, but we do have mobile enforcement cameras that boroughs can request the deployment of. And there's a process that councillors or borough officers have formed that, it's like an internal form. So residents can't access it, but they can make requests to officers that can come through to to us to deploy our mobile speed enforcement cameras in the borough. There was some confusion between myself and officers about the Community Road Watch initiative, which is where residents can report speeding offences. And that's not a puff piece. That's a really invaluable intel gathering tool for us. It is currently on pause because of the way that the Met Police are doing their operations. So the way that Community Road Watch used to be done was it was delivered by the Safer Transport team, PCs. It's going to be delivered by the police's road danger reduction team now. Sounds like a small and esoteric change. It is. Residents don't need to be concerned with it. But essentially it means Community Road Watch is on pause just for the time being, but it is going to be coming back. There will be a continuation of the Community Road Watch initiative. So in essence, no more static speed cameras for the time being. We're currently reletting our contract on static speed cameras, and that's the operational priority for us at the moment. On the other side of that piece of work, we may pick that back up, but if you want speed enforcement to be done, it's going to be done through a mobile speed enforcement camera, and they can be requested.
Thank you. Roads questions?
Yeah, well, a couple. One is going back. One is about not speed cameras but acoustic cameras. We have requested acoustic cameras because we have a huge problem on Brompton Road, and for some reason you weren't very well, accommodating. Why? That's the first question. The second question is you have some build outs on Earlscourt Road that are from COVID time. Are you going to remove them because COVID is gone? And when? Thank you.
So the acoustic cameras, so this is something that boroughs do across London. It's not something that TfL does. It's absolutely not true that we've not been accommodating on this. There's a camera that went up a few years ago with the help of TfL officers. As I say, it's not something it's not a TfL activity. It's something that we can help with. I think some of the impression of intransigence comes from the fact that some of the lamp columns that were being requested to put acoustic cameras on are very old, or they've already got stuff on them that you can't just take down, whether it be vital signage or another camera. Some of these lamp columns need to be tested for load bearing, whether there's a power source to them. So there's a whole sort of gamut of factors at play here. It's not just a simple matter of us saying, yeah, crack on. We always are accommodating to these requests wherever they come in. As I say, it's not something that we prioritize. It's something that we know boroughs prioritize, and we do help where we can. So that's not true. The Earl's Court scheme, no, that's not coming out. That's going to be upgraded to permanent materials. So what we found during COVID, the reason it was built in COVID was to provide more space for waiting passengers. We found that it's actually a very well used scheme, and since COVID, the use case for it hasn't really changed because we've got a lot of people who use wheelchairs, a lot of people who use buggies, and they have a lot more space now to wait for the bus. Crucially, it doesn't affect the performance of the road network. We know that anecdotally, people feel like it does because sometimes when the M&S truck arrives, it feels like everything backs up. But the journey time impact on our buses, and this is how we know it's not impacting traffic, has been negligible. So there's no reason to take it out and put 2 lanes of traffic back in and reintroduce the dominance of the motor vehicle into what is, after all, a place that this borough is looking to revitalise through its Earl's Court action plan, which we've been liaising on with as well. So the likes of the Haworth Place, the side street off Earl's Court Road. If you come out the Earl's Court Road side, there's a side street just to your left there where Paul's Bakery is. Lovely urban realm scheme there. If you reintroduce 2 lanes of traffic, you sort of undermine all the work there. We've been working really closely with your officers to remove street clutter and make the street seem a lot nicer. So we know that making Earl's Court feel nicer and more welcoming and pleasant and less intimidating for people on foot and on bicycles and in wheelchairs is important to this borough. So it's not something that we're looking to undermine.
One from me on roads. Can you give me an assurance you're on track to deliver the safe pedestrian crossing at Cromwell Road, Gloucester Road interchange in the next financial year?
Right, yes, so that is one that I do have. Yeah, so the intended build timeframe for the Gloucester Cromwell is autumn 28.
28.
Yes,
All right.
it's still in the feasibility design stage at this point. So that is autumn 28, given where we are now, that does track. So it needs a consultation, it needs a detailed design, and then we need to procure a
There
contract.
is a detailed design, isn't
Uh,
there? Our officers can probably answer that at the back.
we're in the feasibility design stage for that junction.
Mark, 28, but we had detailed design for the Cromwell Road, Gloucester Road interchange.
There's a detailed design, and there hasn't, and Andrew's right, there hasn't been a consultation yet. Well, there was a few years ago on a different scheme, but there hasn't been a consultation on this scheme. I'm not close to details of when that consultation is at, but I believe there is more work being done by TfL engineers finessing the design scheme handed to them. Is that right, Andrew?
Yeah, that's right. So we're still in the feasibility phase. What we're looking to achieve is quite wholesale, so it will be a significant build, introducing the signalisation to all four arms of the junction. So it's not something that really can be accelerated and be delivered before autumn 2028, given the vital need to consult as well. So that's the news on that. Unfortunately, it's not what you want to hear, but that's the window that we're currently aiming for.
Now, what to do? Yes, but yes,
Yeah.
okay, all right. I heard the answer. Councillors not on the committee on roads, Mary.
Yes, I just wanted to raise the fact that for many residents and indeed for many councillors, sometimes TfL feels quite uncooperative and unresponsive. And I say that because I share a ward with Councillor Idris, and we had the whole issue of the acoustic cameras. It seemed to be like just the computer says no, and a lack of cooperation and will to find a solution. And I've got another issue in my ward where for a year a resident has been complaining to TfL about ponding in the pavement. And our officers have also raised it, and nothing has been done. And it just feels like a behemoth that we can't actually get any response out of. And I wondered if you could comment on how we could, how we can interact with TfL in a more constructive way in the future. Because, we start off thinking you're going to be able to solve it, and then nothing happens.
Yeah, I think that we're here tonight. We come to events like this all the time. We exist to engage with stakeholders and residents. So, we are the human side of it. We don't want people to feel like it's a faceless organisation that you can't do business with. Having said that, if you remember I don't know if you hear at the very beginning of this meeting when we spoke about our finances, and while it's looking rosier on the capital side, on the operational side, we're still really sharpening our pencils. There's a lot of money still to be saved in terms of if we're going to get on an even keel over the next 3 to 5 financial years. So a lot of our activity is focused on core and safety critical stuff. So when we're asked to do things like acoustic cameras or look at ponding, we will go and on the ponding, for instance, I know exactly what will have happened with my operational colleagues. They'll go out there and they'll take some measurements in terms of the deviation of the pavement. If it's found to be within an acceptable, this is kind of the computer says no scenario, but when you're working with our level of money, you have to take your priorities where it's needed. They'll take a measurement, and if it's below the threshold of a trip hazard, we can't justify the spend on that. So it might be, it's something that will be done at a later date. Because we've got, requests like this all over London. And we're a public body, we're a non-profit organisation. Every penny that we make goes back into the transport network. We don't have a lot of operational money to go around, unfortunately. It's the harsh reality of it. But we're not deaf to these requests, is the key thing. I
think to residents, and maybe this is the fault of communication, it certainly feels like that. For residents, the stuff like ponding, a great big thing, puddle basically that you have to walk through every time you go down a bit of pavement is actually quite serious. But anyway, I don't want to delay anymore. I just want to make that point very clearly from a resident and councillor perspective.
Thanks. So we're carrying on with roads questions, Kieran, and we're into
Joe, so actually going to talk about, and building something that Councillor Wheels said and also Councillor just to some extent. So I live 5 doors down from Warwick Road. And I'll be honest with you, TfL is a neighbour from hell. Like you guys just pay no, not you personally, but you guys pay no attention to what people locally actually want. You don't listen to us. There are consultations put out. Everything seems predetermined. For instance, been there 4 years. You've mentioned the whole pipeline of work present on Warwick Road. No residents made aware of anything that's going on. We're just not told this is happening sometimes. Good example, that was a Holland Park roundabout scheme. Even when the consultation went out, the social media from TfL was it is happening. So already the fundamentals have been decided. So the quality of the roads, the way it's kept is very, very poor. Back in December, it was really sad to see an old man literally fall on his face and blood along the pavement from the poor way the road is kept. And it's interesting hearing some of the other residents here, the consultation is just not there. And one particular item that Councillor Idris referred to was the Earls Court bus build-out scheme. So, Chair, if you don't mind, on page 40 is the list of KSI locations, and on the see number 3, which is Earls Court Road and Cromwell Road. A lot of the reason why you have a lot of KSIs there from someone who uses that stretch every day is because it's exacerbated very much by the bus stop build-outs. It's the congestion that goes across Cromwell Road. So what happens is there's 2 box junctions and there's a little line in between. And if you're driving across, you often get caught in that line between the 2 box junctions because the constant traffic caused by the bus stop build-outs, and it is constant. It's a nightmare. And you know, residents have complained. Residents have said we don't want that, but there's bus stop build-outs there. Please remove them. And TfL just come here, despite the fact you had another consultation in 2026, finished in January over you know, the future of those build-outs. To hear you saying, oh no, they are being kept, despite the consultation report has been produced, is pretty insulting, really. You know, so I guess my question is just to tell what my questions are. Number 1, what are you going to do about the state of Warwick Road and the current state of it is? 2, when are you going to start communicating with local residents about what you are planning to do on Warwick Road? And 3, will you finally listen to the residents about the bus stop build out, especially in light of the KSI hotspot that we have at the top of that road?
So yeah, Warwick Road, we haven't done a consultation yet on our Warwick Road corridors aspirations because they're still in utero essentially. There's nothing, you haven't missed anything essentially. We haven't made any announcements in terms of we're building a scheme here. As I said to Councillor Verboten before, we're having to wait to see what the Earls Court development is going to bring online before we can finalise our plans for that corridor. There will be a full public consultation on any schemes that come forward as part of that corridor work. The Earls Court build-out scheme, we didn't do a consultation this year on that. We've communicated in some engagement, but the last consultation we did was during COVID on that scheme. And we did publish a consultation report about that. We have since re-engaged about it. But as I say, it's not something that we're looking to remove at this point.
So just on that point though, here you have councillors saying this scheme isn't working, we don't like it. You have residents saying this scheme doesn't work, we don't like it. You're talking about working more proactively with the council. It really doesn't feel like it, but it's falling very short about half an hour after you just said it.
Could I'm just going to add another supplementary to that. Is it if we need a consultation for Gloucester Road, Cromwell Road interchange, surely we need a consultation on the Earls Court road build out as well.
Right.
So we did a consultation on the Earls Court.
To build, not to.
Hang on, let's hear the answer, please.
Yeah, so we did a consultation on the Earls Court scheme. We wouldn't do another consultation because it's been requested. The scheme has gone in and is, according to our metrics, it's working. We know that it's not.
So we'll just listen to the answer now.
Yeah, we haven't seen any fatal collisions since on where the build outs are.
It's meters up the road. Right.
Yeah, but let's carry on with the answer, please, Andrew, and then we'll move on.
No, that's the end of my answer.
Okay, so we'll move on to another subject of Sam.
A road question.
No, short road question. No, Sam, any questions here of different subject? No. Okay. What?
Yeah.
I'm going to keep TfL road running till 8 o'clock.
Okay.
That's all right. Yeah. we're not going to go beyond that, but I realise there's loads of subjects we could talk about. We could keep you here till midnight. We're not going to do that. We'll keep it till 8 o'clock, and have another subject.
Dockless e-bikes hire. I know there is, it's waiting for a cent, but I just want to have an idea about what is TfL's plan once that becomes law to actually alleviate the pain and the suffering of Londoners from e-bikes being dumped everywhere.
Yeah, so the bill will essentially give us the power to regulate this sector.
Right.
We know that it's a pain point for a lot of boroughs, especially the parking aspect. It's important that any regulation that comes forward that we're at the helm of works for all the boroughs. So we do need to work with all the boroughs when that happens. In terms of the timeline for it, I don't know at the moment. It's still in the House of Lords, I believe.
Yeah. But what are your intentions? I mean, you must have an idea what you want to happen. What is your vision for it?
So the vision is to drive better, more consistent standards in terms of
Such as?
Yeah, well, the better safety, better controlled parking, better links to public transport in terms of if it's geo-fenced drop zones, how that integrates with the public transport network. We can look at things like pricing structure, the affordability of it, better enforcement with the operators. At the moment, it's the e-scooter trial gives a good picture of what it can look like, because that really does work. The trial that we've been running over the last several years, it's got really high compliance rates with parking. It's really popular, despite the fact that it is more regulated than the e-bike sector. So we know that's going to really be the model for how we see e-bikes working.
Because currently operators have a very wide diameter for where they can park. And as a result, bikes end up being in a lot of different places. Will this regulation give you the power to ask the operators to reduce that radius?
Yes, yeah, it does. Yes, it will. That's what I mean by geofencing. So you will be penalised as a user if you drop your bike outside of a sort of demarcated or digitally demarcated area. We will need the approval of boroughs if we want to paint road markings on pavements to show where you can drop these things. That's still up for grabs in the detail, but essentially, yeah, the idea behind this is something that we've been lobbying for a while, is to eradicate this parking problem.
Thanks. I'm going to move. I need to move on because I need to give others a chance. So we'll carry on with cycling, scooters, e-bikes. Laura?
So mine is vaguely around that, but it's also kind of what I asked earlier, which I didn't get an answer to. How often do TfL check the roads that they are in, that's their jurisdiction, red routes and all the TfL roads, for maintenance, for e-bikes, for anything? And how soon after checking, if there's a fault, do they fix the fault or clear the road or whatever it is you need to do?
So, well, it's boroughs that give the licenses to the likes of Lime Bikes. So that's a question for your borough colleagues.
Okay,
but
then the roads in general.
Yeah, the roads in general. I don't know the routine for every, each aspect is checked on a different road. So, ponding issues, trip hazard issues, vegetation that needs cutting back. They're all done by sort of different contractors on different routers. So I can provide that to you afterwards.
And obviously it's done in priority where it's safe or where safety critical. Clearly, we will, manage that and sort that out as a priority.
Sorry, I know you had a cycling question.
Yeah, okay, thanks. I just want to say, I also have a bus question later when you get.
Well, we might not be doing buses, but
that's more important than cycling.
Well, I don't think do your cycling question, please. We'll do that. I think we're going to have to timed out on buses.
Okay, well, it's a big issue in my ward. Holland Park roundabout bike lane. That was extremely controversial amongst the residents in the area, and you had loads and loads of objections. And more importantly, perhaps, you've had an alternative scheme offered, which I think was cheaper and more sensible and used mostly the existing infrastructure. Clearly, something had to be done. The question is, why was this rejected, and why have you, TfL, you personally, decided to ignore all that, just go ahead with the scheme, which just goes right across the roundabout and will annoy lots and lots of residents?
When we consulted on Cycleway 10 in 2019, RBKC were extremely clear that they didn't want that scheme to happen. But there was one aspect of the scheme that they did support, and that was going across the roundabout because of the safety case. And that's on the record. So we've got the borough's backing for that. What we've done this year, in the last few years, when we consulted on it a couple of years ago, we revisited the design because we couldn't go straight across the middle because there's some Thames water infrastructure there. So we've come up with a design that skirts the bottom edge of the roundabout. We know that there's a compelling safety case for this. We know that that data is contested by certain stakeholders, and that's absolutely fine. It's their prerogative. But in our view, and we know that the work that we're doing on Vision Zero works because of the data that we've got from the last 10 years of lives saved. We know that there's a safety case here. We know that there's a lot of cyclists that already cycle across the roundabout. They will continue to do so, regardless of how upgraded the perimeter infrastructure is. So we have a duty and obligation to protect those cyclists. So whether we just sort of ignore the design that we've got and only upgrade the outside, which is what the SOS group have proposed, those cyclists around 1,800 a day will still cycle in the road. It's an extremely dangerous place to do that. It's an accident waiting to happen, and we don't want that to happen. You know, where we prioritize our investment is where we know that the highest level of danger is, and the data really backs us up on that. So over the last 10 years, through the Vision Zero program, we've calculated 250 lives. That's 250 people that wouldn't be alive today if we hadn't invested in safety schemes. So we know what we're doing. We know where the investment is needed. Holland Park Roundabout is one of those locations. We haven't disregarded what the SOS group has suggested out of hand. We've already said that we'll be looking to upgrade the outside tracks for those people that do want to use them. But the case remains that people will always be cycling in the road. Let's put a cycle track there and keep them safe.
Tim, anything on cycling? Councillors not on the committee on cycling, Joanna?
Yeah, so I also wanted to ask about the cycle lane that goes down Bayswater Road and the impact on the bus journey times. So I know you put in a light touch cycle lane, and I've sat on the buses and it's gone nowhere. And I'm very concerned about the impact on bus journey times, both because of the proposed cycle lane there, but also what are you proposing with pedestrianisation of Oxford Street? Are we actually going to keep the two buses, the 94 and 148, that run up Bayswater Road? Because you've just gone out and asked people to increase their bus use, and yet at the same time, even though you've got back cycle routes along all of Bayswater Road and through the park, but you sit on a bus and you go nowhere for 20 minutes, just because you've moved it all down to one lane with traffic and buses all together.
Unfortunately, I don't really know much about the Bayswater scheme myself. Yeah, it's not really. We've got sort of geographically split, and that will fall.
We can find it.
We'll have a massive backlog on us in Nottingham Gate because of where the bit where it's two lanes, and suddenly it will be one. So I'm expecting a lot of backtracking into our area as a result. But yes, if you can come back to Hodgson.
Thank you very much, residents. So there's cycling.
Yeah, I shall be writing on behalf of the Kensington Society to Andrew. I think it's been appallingly handled, the fact that you went ahead with your announcement before you had your promised meeting with the group of residents associations on road safety issues. We still see Holland Park Round. It looks dangerous. It is dangerous for motorcyclists and for motorised vehicles. There have been almost no cycle accidents. The evidence that's been gathered on other roundabouts where cycle lines have been installed is that accidents tend to increase after their installation. This is something that really we should have bottomed out with TfL. before you made your announcement.
Comments?
I'll just come back to what I said before, that we have an obligation to protect the people that are there, and just because.
You're not protecting them. I mean, you may have a situation where there'll be more cycle accidents on the roundabout than there are now.
I don't know, what other schemes,
Sorry?
what other schemes are you referring to?
Andrew has the data.
No, we're asking
No,
what
but
schemes
what
you're referring to where collisions
I'm
have gone.
sorry. I'm terribly deaf, so speak
Sorry.
up.
You mentioned other roundabout
Yes.
schemes.
Yes.
What ones are you referring to?
I can't quote chapter and verse, but the data has been sent to, in fact, Andrew had a long session with the residents groups, which was much appreciated back in December, at which these figures were presented. And I think they've been subsequently sent, haven't they, to you? If not, we can certainly send them. And Andrew promised to come back to us to talk about it, He kept putting it off on various, because it was Christmas, because he was on holiday in Australia, I don't know what. And then before he come back to us, there's suddenly this announcement. It's really not the way to handle your public.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of engagement so far, hasn't there? We've had many meetings with TfL, certainly many more than other stakeholders in the area. We know that there's a lot of people that do support the scheme. We're waiting for it to happen, and we're equally upset that it hadn't happened yet. So, you're sort of seeing things from your point of view. You've presented us with certain data sets which aren't compatible with what we presented.
Well,
You
that's
disagree
fine,
with
but-
you disagree with what we presented, and we don't see a whole lot of merit in what you presented. So we know that there's a safety case here, and as I say, we've saved 250 lives already through the prioritization process that we use. We see no reason to really deviate from that, because we know that this is part of a wider scheme, by the way, which links all
No,
the way.
I accept that, and on congestion, that'll no doubt sort itself out eventually.
There was a meeting that we had, Sophia, you'll recall, which was purely on traffic modelling. And the traffic modelers that you commissioned were essentially educated by
No,
our.
I don't talk about that, it's the road safety issue.
I'm going to call a halt to this now, because it's gone into a two-way issue. So no, that's the end. That's it now. So we've had TfL on witness stand for an hour and a half. I mean, there's clearly a disagreement about the Holland Park roundabout between TfL on the one hand and probably almost everybody in this room on the other hand, including especially the residents that live near it. But we are where we are, and the announcement's been made. I do want to say thank you for coming to the committee tonight, though, both of you, for the very detailed answers you've given on the subjects that we've covered. We have covered a lot of ground with the tubes, the roads, cycling, and but we've clearly not covered everything that TfL does. So last time, a year ago, we started with buses, and we spent 45 minutes on buses. They've had a rest this year. We haven't covered taxis. We haven't covered the river. There's lots of other things that we could have talked about. If any members of the committee wish to ask other questions on subjects that haven't been raised, then please provide a written question through the committee officers, and hopefully TfL will be able to answer written questions if they're put in by our committee officers. But I do want to say thank you very much for your engagement. It was much appreciated by residents. We've had a lot of residents in the room, and thank you very much indeed. I'm going to let you off the hook there. I'm going to go on to our next paper, which is obviously now. I'm not taking interventions from the floor. We're going to move, in the interest of time, move on to the next paper, which is on Albion Bridge. Thank you very much, Andrew.
I'm sorry, I have to.
So we need to move. It's not move on, please.
No, I was not.
Okay.
It's not a piece of law.
You'll be able to watch the recording of the meeting, but we spoke on that topic for half an hour at the beginning.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Okay, we're moving on to paper 85, which is the Albert Bridge, and I'm just waiting for Andrew to sit down on my papers. So thank you for the paper that's in our pack, and at 5:45 this evening we had the key decision report, which I did have a chance to read because I happened to be at home at the time. Not everybody on the committee may have had a chance to read it, so perhaps we could have a verbal introduction to that and a quick summary of what's in that paper. And I was quite surprised to see so much sort of budgeting information as well. So John, you've got paper, then Andrew, and go into some officer level detail.
Yes, thank you, Greg. We want to get Albert Bridge open to vehicles as soon as possible. We need to do that safely. The papers in front of you show where we've got to so far. We've asked engineers and consultants to work at pace to find a way to reopen the bridge. This is the progress that has been made. We're currently forecasting that it could take up to a year, but there's a very clear challenge to officers to try and get it open much quicker than that if they can do so safely. In terms of the options that were presented in the key decision, they show how we might be able to repair the bridge, and there's some betterment in it as well. And as members mindful of how disruptive the closure is, how critical a link this is, we're looking very seriously. And I don't want to determine a decision that will be made in the future, but we certainly want the bridge to be in the best possible condition. And any opportunities that we may have here to make that happen, we would be very seriously considering.
That's attempted. So the original paper describes how we ended up closing the road bridge to traffic. So it was the process by which we did the closure. The paper you received this evening is the key decision for, in essence, making the repairs a capital project. Because of our project governance, we wanted to make sure nothing was going to slow us down in terms of getting the bridge fixed. Anything over £1.5 million is a key decision. So we wanted that decision passed by the leadership team next week. And because of the publishing deadlines, that's why you received it as a late back today. The paper, the key decision, doesn't expand particularly on the original paper. It just describes the scale of the expenditure we're looking at, which could be up to £8.5 million. And it also confirms that we still don't have a solution for getting the bridge open earlier to traffic, but that we are still trying, and that we do have all our design teams on board. So we are up to speed very quickly in terms of the design of the temporary and the permanent works.
Yeah, should we add that we've been in contact with TfL and the Department for Transport about the nature of the problem, what we're looking at doing in order to get the bridge open, and because given the scale of the expenditure, it would make sense to look at how we could split the burden, because this is a key link for this part of London, not just Kensington and Chelsea.
Right, so going around the road, my left, Sam.
Yeah, so it was on that. Obviously, we can ask for financial help. Technical expertise is all going to be done here in the consultancy because it's our bridge to try and fix, but obviously it's used by others. So is there any other local authority or any other government department that has indicated that it can help fund it? And obviously, I also want to thank the quality of this paper because it actually just point out just how much work that needs to be done to solve a bridge problem that I hope will not reoccur. And therefore, it's not just solving the one isolated item, it's making sure that solution and stop it from occurring in the other positions where it could occur.
We've written to the DFT for their structures fund, but they haven't opened for applications, I think it's right to say.
That's right.
Which means that once it's open, we will clearly apply. We've sent that letter to sort of mark the card that we intend to take that opportunity once it's available.
Just on top of that is the London Assembly did also 3 years ago make an investigation into how 8 bridges across the Thames are looked after by four London boroughs. So there's 28 boroughs who don't look after a bridge, and there's 4 that do, and we look after 2 of those. And 2 of those are exceedingly complicated, expensive bridges. These are one of the most valuable. They are probably our most valuable asset.
Yeah.
That you've seen that the prices for replacing Hammersmith Bridge, it's the same sort of figure. Those are the sort of values we're talking about for these bridges. So we're talking with the London Assembly. We're talking to Transport for being a fairer funding for those bridges, and we've asked them to pick that up.
2 questions. One, can you walk me through the regular maintenance program that you have for the bridge? 1, and 2, is the bridge insured? And if not, why?
When we don't insure bridges, no. There's also be difficult. If it was hit by a boat, obviously we are insured by the boat. So bridges do get hit by boats, and bridge authorities do claim on the boats, but not for where. This is in essence wear and tear. This is something that was. It's at some point this component would have broken. It started 150 years, but it wouldn't last literally forever. And so it's something that it is part of wear and tear. The first question, sorry, I actually looked at it.
Maintenance, what is the maintenance?
Maintenance, yeah. So every bridge we have to have full inspection every 6 years, and we'll do that. And it has to have what we call a general inspection, just a structural engineer looking at it every 2 years. So we were getting ready for the 2-year inspection, which is when we found this crack. So it would have been done in April, so we would have found it anyway in April, but we found it 2 months early. On top of that, I think every fortnight there's a water inspection along the road, looking for anything obvious, anything that's as part of our general highway safety inspection.
Thank you. So how confident are engineers that the cracked cast iron component, leading off that question, is the only structural issue? And so as it is a very old bridge, is there a long-term sort of investment strategy to ensure that it's structurally resilient and similar things don't happen so sort of desperately or last minute, so to speak, in the future? Those are my 2 main ones, and then I have one sort of traffic and stuff, the effects.
So the confidence so we spent the last 5 weeks. Obviously, it's been a very busy 5 weeks. We've found an awful lot. We've discussed. So we've uncovered dirt and everything to try and find anything else is broken. Nothing yet that we're concerned with. There's other wear and tear. As I said, because we were doing inspection in April, we would have found wear and tear, and that's all we've found so far is wear and tear. The final inspections won't have results until the first week of May, so that's when we'll be confident about what the scope of work is. That's why we wanted to get all of this process for launching the project, and we are designing that work we know we need to do. We are designing that. We had the option of sitting back and waiting until we knew everything, but we know that needs fixing, and that's what we are working. It does say in the report, this is in the whole of the world. There's not another bridge like this, so we can't go to another country and say, how do you fix that? Yeah. It's something we have global leaders in bridge engineering working for us, and so we have the best in the business working at that solution.
And then I just so in the future, is there anything you can do? I did ask that, but
yeah. So in terms of the iron structure itself, not really, because it's been built the way it's been built, as it describes in the key decisions. It's never built to carry motor traffic. It's simply we've adapted it to make it carry motor traffic, and that always has some. So it's got a 3-ton weight limit on it, for instance, and we can enforce it with cameras that we can't physically stop those vehicles going on there. We've got the width restriction, so you can't get anything big up there, yeah. But those vehicles are still sizable. And so we'll be looking to see if there's anything else we can do to limit that. And we described in the key decision paper how the average weight of vehicles is increasing quite significantly. Cars, private motor cars, even though they're below the weight limit, every 2-ton car will wear the bridge quicker than a 1.5-ton car. So it's something we're looking at, and something that we're building into. We hope to replace the deck. So if there's time in this closure, then and leadership team agrees to it, then we will replace the deck with something that is more durable.
Okay, perfect. And then just to the traffic question, sorry, because that was the same question. Thank you, Jen. So yeah, with the traffic, obviously there's a backlog all up Kings Road, and some of the roads are not sort of being utilised because there's no left turns or right turns. I don't know if I'm left from the right, but you know what I mean. Is there any strategy or way that we can sort of alleviate that backlog of traffic that is getting congested because this bridge is not in action? And also, I know there's some sort of works on Kings Road particularly. Is there a way that we can kind of maybe not do that whilst we're doing that? How can we mitigate or manage that?
We wrote to TfL about turns that have been banned along the embankment and asked them to look at that again, because obviously if there are turns banned and the bridge is closed, that is exacerbating the pressure. TfL is the signalling authority, so we would also ask them to look at whether there's something that could be done there. In terms of planned maintenance, that's something I've been looking at with officers today, actually. And if there are opportunities to reduce pressure on local roads there over the next couple of months in particular, I have asked officers to do that.
Thank you. Dory, anything on the bridge?
Yeah, I'm looking at the additional paper. I'm interested to read. I've got 2 parts of it. 22-month major refurbishment. And I mean, it's a little while ago now, but what was that for, if you remember, if you have the info to hand?
So you can't see it, but underneath the tarmac panels, there are very large hardwood blocks. So the bridge deck is tropical hardwood. So we replaced all. That's a main one. So that was all replaced. And then on top of that, we have these plywood and asphalt panels. And it's those which are wearing. That's wearing too quickly. I mean, that was 15 years ago, 14 years ago. So they've lasted well, but we want them to last 20 years, and they're not quite lasting that long. That's what we're finding. And we did also we rewired the bridge, for instance.
Because it looks like some of that's going to be redone as part of current works.
That's some of it would be. That's right. But
and finally, first of all, just a quick comment. First time I see the practical effect of cars of EVs, because that's what the weight comes from.
It's not, no. So it's not.
The batteries weigh a lot.
So that isn't the only. It's the size of vehicles as well. So simply it's not. Electric vehicles are heavier for the same vehicle, but it's a larger vehicle. It is larger vehicles.
And finally, just on the costings here, you've got 2 tables which together add up to about 8.3 million pounds. But in the text it says somewhere 2.6 million. Here we go. Page 6, option 4, which is I think recommended. Allocation of 2.6 million. Preliminary designs suggest. Well, it says here it's a bit unclear what provision one should make, which I can understand. But then it said allocation of 2.6. So how does that fit in with the 8.3 million? On top of that?
Double check the numbers then. So just in case I've made an arithmetic, I will double check.
You see it's where
numbers. This is
paragraph 5.4 is where the 2.6 comes up. Okay. In the additional paper. Just interested. I mean, we have to do it.
Right. Okay, I will double check this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I thought the data on the rate of the cost was very interesting, but I was also wondering if the amount of traffic going over the bridge plays a role in that, because I would expect, and do tell me if I'm correct or not, that with the closure of Hammersmith Bridge, traffic on Albert Bridge has increased significantly over the years, and maybe that plays a role in that as well. So when you're looking at calculating how long the refurbishing will last, that would also be a factor in it, I would expect. Am I right in that or not?
So I don't have the traffic flow, traffic figures on Albert Bridge to hand. I don't think we've detected any long-term increases. It's not a standard version for housing. We've found, for instance, Putney Bridge is taking a lot. So we're talking a lot to Wandsworth at the moment. Yeah. So we're working side by side, and they're having to juggle. They've got different bridges to us, but they've got the same problem putting burden onto their network.
Mary, any questions from you? Well, very important that we had that debate tonight. Because this is a black swan moment, the bridge, and it's a very important, probably the most important transport issue that's hit you unexpectedly this year. So thank you very much for the paper. Much appreciated that you've done it at short notice, and obviously the key decisions you got it to us in time for the meeting. But much obliged for it. And I think we'll move on now to the last substantive paper involving the council. So probably maybe two of you staying and Mark coming forward. Well, Charlie, do you want to introduce the paper, and I'll bring Mark in and sat down.
Yeah, this is an annual report, so obviously, you'll have seen it before. I think it's positive that the number of slight casualties and total road casualties are both down by double-digit percentage figures. That shows that there are some positives here in terms of road safety, but any serious collision or fatality is one too many. And so we need to keep working hard at reducing the number of serious injuries or deaths, etc., that are on our roads. I think on the roads that we manage, it's really important that we're using the funding that we do get from things like the local implementation plan to improve the safety at junctions. I also always note with some sadness that the majority of places where there are the highest number of collisions that are managed by TfL in our borough, and so it's a reminder that that's another thing that we collectively must scrutinise them on, because we want to bring down the number of serious collisions and fatalities that take place wherever they are, even where it is just outside of our control.
Very much, Mark. Would you like to add?
No, I mean, yeah, we come to committee every year, and I was going to start with the good news as well, because there is some good news, and we have to hold on to that, because it is a bit depressing as officers, I'm sure, as members, to see that the serious injuries and deaths continue they've risen every year since COVID, although again, I'd also say that in 2024 that we're looking at now, the pedestrians, even the serious injuries went down quite significantly from 44 to 36. So still 36 too many, but there are some kind of positive signs in relation to pedestrians. I suppose the other thing I was going to add, or Caroline might want to add something, is when we came to your committee last year, we said we were going to bring in some external independent experts to tell us where we were going wrong, or where, to see if they could see anything in the patterns, or they could mine deeper into the data to tell us any ways in which what was happening here wasn't the same as the London trends. And I'm kind of disappointed really that there isn't anything really obvious that's kind of left out. The report does mention that they feel we should keep going with the engineering measures, and Chair, that we've said before, the problem with the engineering measures is we can only do so many a year, even if the theatre funding hasn't gone down. Andrew Hatch acknowledged earlier. But even if we were doing as many as we were before, it's just a never-ending job to kind of get around the whole borough. Interestingly, the TfL did publish their Vision Zero Action Plan 2 just last week, and the first thing on their list, because of course they talk about London as a whole, was all about speed limit. The only road left in Kensington and Chelsea, off the Westway, that has a speed limit higher than 20 is like Cromwell Road. So almost no roads really in KNC. So we've already played that well under your previous leadership, John. We went down from 30 to 20 across the borough until 2021. So we've already done that, and we don't have anywhere else to go in terms of area-wide schemes. There are one or two things we're thinking of that maybe you can do, but the other big finding that came from the Steer report was what a small fraction of all the injury collisions in this borough involve a driver who's a resident in this borough. It'd be great if everyone that was being run over, in a way, was what was being. We kept it local because then at least we'd have more ways of communicating to people. But we have in the past done advertising on the backs of buses and so on. But it's very difficult to reach people that are coming from all over London and beyond and driving in our borough. And even the casualties, even if our education was around the people who are being injured, the majority of them are also not RPKC residents. So the education challenge is quite a tough one. Nevertheless, Caroline's got zebra crossings going in left, right, and centre right now across the borough, and we're working on pedestrian crossing schemes.
That's the good news, is that this year particularly has been a really good year for delivery, I would say. We've delivered more crossings, or by the end of the year, we will have delivered more crossings than I think we ever have in one year. And crossings actually are one of the priorities of the new PFL vision.
Vision Zero Action Plan 2.
Yeah, so we've got that. We've upgraded some junctions from mini roundabouts to priority junctions, two of those fairly recently, and another one hopefully starting by the end of the year. The downside is, as you know, it takes a long time for us to then have a few years worth of condition data so we can see if that actually has had improvement. But we hope that we will see improvements of those, because they were the ones that have popped up on our tables in the report as nodes that are really quite poor conditions. So yeah, and I should probably also touch on obviously all our behaviour change stuff that we do as well, and because I tend to forget about that, but all the cycle training we do, just like a reduction in TFL funding, school travel plan support, we've put in 2 new school streets this year, which seems to have gone down pretty well. And road safety education that we've always done with children, pedestrian training, cycle training, generally road safety training. Yeah, so it has, there's bad news, but there's good news. We are trying very hard to get on top of those collision hotspots.
We'll go around and do some questions. I will just think back to you that I had so many positive comments from residents about the traffic light crossings on Drayton Gardens at the Old Brompton Road Junction and the Fulham Road Junction. It comes up time and again from people who say how much they appreciate those. And I know there are obviously other schemes around the borough, but that's just one that's very close to where I live, so on my ward boundary. And this comes. I personally use them both a lot, but residents raise them, and so thank you for delivering them.
That's really good to hear. Thank you.
But we do obviously we have to move forward, and we've got some questions. So Tim.
My only question is regarding the cyclist KSIs. So between 2019 and 2024, the difference is an increase in 59%. I appreciate we have more cyclists on the road, etc. But what plans are in place to ensure that that number is going down over time?
Well,
it's all so sporadic. There's no, I would say, against High Street, there's no real hotspots that we know exactly to whiz cyclists to, kind of thing. So it's really difficult to target particular areas for improvements, really.
Well, that's all true. We like I said, the independent consultants, so it was a company called Steer, a major company. They said keep going with the engineering measures generally, but like I said in my opening remarks, that going to take a long time to get through all the junctions and then all the links between the junctions. And what we did ask them to look specifically at the cycling ASIs, just to see if there's something different in the pattern there from what's going on elsewhere. They really haven't given us anything. They haven't submitted their final version of the report, but in the draft that we've seen, it doesn't give us a kind of light bulb moment for what we need to do with it. We're looking at whether things like the early release signals for cyclists at junction, whether that might help. But the data on that, so that everyone loves what cyclists love them, and they seem to be quite popular from what I've looked at in my sort of limited online research. But I've not found anything that says this will deliver you a 10 or 20 or whatever % reduction in collisions at the junction.
So are you saying therefore that most of the KSIs are actually happening at junctions, not on regular roads? Is that where accidents with cyclists happen?
We haven't divided up all the, what did we say, how many? Page, table 3, we've got 43 cyclist KSIs in 2024. That's actually a good question. What proportion of those were at junctions? What were links? Although I would say that when they will be allocated officially to being at a junction or not at a junction. But then when you really drill down, you find that it might be 50 meters. It can still be 50 meters away from the junction and still be counted as being at the junction. So in terms of actually understanding what you need to do, it's limited. But that is actually something we could look at to see balance between the links and the node.
And do you also speak to cyclist groups? So let's say the London Cyclist Campaign who consider KNC to have some of the worst cycling infrastructure of the whole of London. Do you actually discuss what the problems are?
Yeah, we met them fairly recently.
And do you have those conversations, but what happens with what comes out of those conversations?
I think you're pushing for, they were asking for us to do more two-way cycling schemes.
Yeah, they were.
From my recollection of the most recent meeting that we had, which actually we are.
Because if you look at the current cycleway map, which the latest one that I could find was from February 2022, it is a mismatch of cycle roads across the borough, but nothing that really goes east to west, north to south, that is actually connecting to other cycleways outside, connecting to other boroughs, but there's nothing that is going straight forward. So there's always interruption of those cycle routes as well. So you go on the same road with a cycleway, and then to continue on, you actually have to go on somewhere that doesn't have a cycleway.
We are looking at the measures that the LCC raised at the last meeting we had with them. There are no plans to introduce east-west or an east-west segregated route on Kensington High Street, but I know that may be a Liberal Democrat campaigning point in the future.
I don't care where the cycle routes go, as long as they get.
I think we just need to move on. Dory, please.
Thanks. I just want to comment on the cyclist casualties. We don't know who the fault is. I mean, I know as a cyclist myself that cyclists can ride very badly and they ignore red lights. We all know this, right? So this is the question, but there's no way of finding out whose fault an accident is, especially a serious one.
Or pedestrian collisions for that matter.
Or
cyclists, yeah.
As a cyclist, my biggest fear is usually a pedestrian just stepping on the road. Anyway, the thing is, regarding some statistics on seriously injured or killed, say on paragraph 1.2 and a couple of other places, say 5.5. Could you give, say, 3-year figures rather than just how it was compared to last year? Because I don't think it means very much. So well, in general, just to finish, maybe depend on the sentence. In some places you give several years worth, in some you don't. And I think 1 year's change isn't very useful. So if it's a 3-year change, so 4-year change.
I was just going to say, I think we start in the sort of summaries comparing this year with last year, because obviously we're comparing this year's report with last year's report. And the reason that we do tend to use 3 years, like when we're doing prioritisation in terms of road casualty history, so collision history of a junction, for example, we look at the last 3 years. Difficulty we have with this is that we're still kind of, next year we'll probably go back to 3 years, I would expect, because we're out of the COVID.
Yeah, 2022 was the first year when we didn't really have restriction.
So the reason we use 2019 quite a lot as a baseline in this is because that was the last reliable year of data before COVID. So
Yeah, absolutely. So we should have made that clear. We looked at 2019.
there is a line
baseline.
somewhere that.
Yeah, it's just a 1 year comparison. I understand that's a specific issue. 1 year comparison isn't.
But, and also, Joe, you can see on figure 2 is quite useful for that, just under paragraph 8.5. There, that sort of charts the, just, just that 8.5. So there you can see how basically we got to 2020, and obviously everyone's collisions went down in 2020 for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But then they've now recovered to the level in 2024. They're now above where they were in the mid 2010s. That's the worry that they're going on. But as we say, there's a lot more cycling going on. But there weren't e-bike riders going around in the mid 2010s. We didn't have.
And in one place, you actually said, there's 50 that Tim mentioned, 59% increase, but somewhere else it says there's a 45% increase in rental e-bike use, and that isn't the whole cycling world. That's just e-bikes. So it's useful to have context. And of course, we don't know how many more cyclists there are. There's no way of measuring it, I should imagine.
Not in its totality, but we do also, there are lots of different metrics for it. And yeah, believe me, we spent a lot of time trying to work it out. And there is a section in there on rates as well, which is something I think we've only recently started to be able to do. But on that 59% increase in KSIs compared to 2019, it is also important to look at, well, what happened to the rest of inner London? They went up, they didn't go up as much. And if we broke it down into each individual borough within inner London, we might find some that were worse and we might find some that were better. But most of the trends that we're all thinking might be part of the reason are trends that we'll be applying absolutely in the rest of inner London. Thanks very much. Thank you, Laura.
Thanks, Chair. So I have a couple of questions. Firstly, I have a couple of residents along Locks Road, and there's, when you come in from the embankment and you go into Locks Road that way, there's loads of cars that just speed, and they're like desperate to have like something else there. And my question is, with zebra crossings, do you ever, or is it normal to have cameras like to see if people are sort of, because a lot of people just drive through, ignore them. Like even if someone's waiting there. No. All right. Okay. Fine. And then also implementing zebra crossings. How long does that take, and how can we do that?
Well, you're getting faster, aren't you? At a rate of knots.
So probably if it's a fairly simple basic zebra crossing, probably about a year and a half. Basically, we have to do maybe like 2 or 3 months for a feasibility study, so someone will look at it and come up with a sort of initial design, quite basic design that we can use for consultation. So then everything's okay, everyone's happy to consult on it for our usual 6 weeks, maybe a month to turn around the report, get a secure decision on it. Then we move to detailed design, which can take a bit longer, 2 or 3 months maybe. And then we have to schedule it in with our highways team to actually build the thing, and that sometimes can be really quick, sometimes can take longer depending on what else is going on in the network, because we also have to close probably. So yeah, usually about a year and a half when you start to finish.
And just one more, is there any way we can, because talking about all those e-bikes that you can just rent, right? Is there any way to monitor the sort of what's it, KSIs? How can you, obviously if
that's one of the frustrations.
Yeah.
It's one of the really big frustrations that the data is all sort of aggregated. It doesn't, at the moment, it doesn't spit out pedal cycles from e-bikes, let alone higher e-bikes compared with other e-bikes, and that's something we're trying to push for.
It's something, even if the police don't try and chase away their report, something we might know a bit more about if regulation comes in on e-bikes. Yeah. So like the e-scooter rental trial, which is regulated, they very much have track of like up to major collisions. So hopefully we get more data. I think it's still down self-reporting, so I think completely, but we might have better data in the whole.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. How much do you think the collisions and the accidents with cyclists actually are caused by the fact that because we have these bikes that you can jump on these days. Everybody thinks they can ride on a bike and ride on the road and go ahead. When in the past, most people who rode bikes actually either did have some kind of training, went to school, have some kind of professionalism about their riding. How much do you think that could be the cause? One.
That's exactly the problem. We don't know.
We can't judge that.
There's somewhere in the report where it talks about rates. It does say that overall, despite the massive increase in size, not just in Sparrow, but
yeah, everywhere.
that the rates, like cycling, is actually safer despite that huge rise in people cycling. So it might not be simple to say that, yeah, it's just because people are cycling.
My next question is on page 30, which is 5.3. It talks about you get typically you get 6 to 9 months delay before the confirmation. If this time reduced, do you think it might help if the time is reduced from 6 to 9 to 3 to 6, for instance? Will it help?
Well, I mean, having data more quickly is always good, but I think for us, the issue of the data is precision and the level of detail. So exactly that point that you and Councillor Burns have both raised around e-bikes. I can't sit here and tell you of the number of cyclist casualties back in 2019, how many of those were on e-bikes, and how many are e-bikes now, because we could hypothesize about where the growth is coming. But because they're not recorded separately, they're all just kind of lumped together, we don't know. So I think that rather than the speed of the data, I mean, yeah, I would say no if they could do it more quickly.
And my final question is, how do we compare to other boroughs?
So yeah, there is a section in there on the rate.
Table 1 compares us to Westminster and London.
But yeah, but not the rest of London, because that's our neighbour more or less.
Tables 4 and 5 compare us to Greater London, Inner London, Westminster, Hammersmith, and Fulham and Wandsworth.
So that's what I mean about talking about rates. So it's obviously limited value saying how many people were injured on our roads compared with how many people were injured on Alfred and Fulham roads, because they're not the same size and not the same length of road. So what we've added to the table is something around rates, because this question has come up before. I'd say it's still imperfect because it's looking at table 3, for example, under paragraph 6.12. For a few boroughs, and we can provide it for other boroughs as well. But all it's really doing is saying how many casualties there were compared with a very, very large number of miles travelled by motor vehicles. So I don't really know. It's a way of kind of making comparing one borough to another, but it doesn't necessarily reflect the different level of danger. And you'll see that Westminster, for example, it still has a higher casualty rate, but our rate is now higher than Hammersmith on the Wandsworth. But I don't know, Westminster is very different from Wandsworth, isn't it?
You've done everything you can with the data. It's incredibly difficult to find the trends when they're not our residents, they're not our accident causes, they're not our victims in general, and we just don't have enough granularity. And even if we did have that granularity, there wouldn't be great enough numbers to include the overall trend. Having said all that, is there anything we do or should be doing in terms of saying advice somewhere on our website based on all of our information? These are the top 3 things that a cyclist, a pedestrian, an e-bike user should be aware of. We know people will not read it until they have usually had an accident. But if there was an instruction book saying cycling in Kensington, Chelsea, or being a pedestrian in Kensington, Chelsea, what do the stats tell us? Which are our bullet points that we could put on a website somewhere?
I mean, it's a great question, and I would extend it to what for all road users. What can you do to avoid colliding with someone? I mean, I could come up with it, but it'd be based on my own prejudices and anecdotes, not based on data. The STEER report, the consultant report, did look at the most common manoeuvres involved in collisions, wouldn't they? But it, yeah. So we don't,
Headphones, being on the phone, all sorts of things could be.
all of those things,
Yeah.
things like what, having your lights on at night, but we still don't have data that says how many people that were riding a bike at night didn't have a light.
Yeah.
Because we don't know that.
Yeah, unless they're a delivery driver, in which case you absolutely know they didn't have a light. I think they'll be driving, one of those 40-mile-per-hour electric bikes.
I think it would be really difficult to come up with our own kind of guidelines around this sort of thing.
Maybe it's a London council thing,
Yeah, or even national.
it's
I
a
don't
London
think-
thing, maybe because of the quantity. But I asked, but I think that's the only thing we can really do.
Yeah, but I think at a practical level, there are things that we are doing and that we can do. So we are trying to target the resource that we have at the places where there are the highest number of collisions. So that means that we're making places with bad collision records materially safer. I think that's the role of a local authority where it can access the funding to do that.
And of course, you often don't know how an accident happens, unless it happens to be one where a camera has caught it, and whether the police then give us a serious accident, look for the video and make that available, and then that would be one conclusion. But I don't see. We can just keep looking and seeing if trends emerge.
And we're hoping to be able to get our hands on more granular, more detailed data, whether we'll be able to absorb it all, make sense of it all. But yeah, it's work in progress. And I think as well, maybe one thing we should do is really push the case to government to get better, more accurate for the data, the collision reporting data, catching up with the fact that we've now got new modes of transport on our road.
That's practical. I think that's the future. It's got to start somewhere.
Probably the demographic data on the victim, KSI victims, sort of ages, sex, dresses.
Yeah, I think, well, not dresses. We don't. There's something in there. There's a stat with a little footnote at the bottom of the page about the fact that a very large proportion of the casualties, the kind of the home address data, or home address
It's non-addresses, sort of residents, non-residents, and then
we know that for almost
ages.
for every category of road user type, apart from pedestrians, it's men who are the majority kind of casualty. For pedestrians, it's more balanced, I think, but I think women slightly more than men. So, and then sort of the age that all that data is on the TfL dashboard as well.
Yeah, you can.
Age breakdown and gender. It doesn't really. So that might help you to sort of segment your education campaigns as opposed to some degree. But it was more that, again, men are much more likely to be, or a much bigger proportion of cyclists casualties are men than women. But we also know that men cycle more than women, so it's not necessarily the case that their rate is worse.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a whole subject there and a whole essay on that subject. Just on the crossings and engineering solutions, how are you getting on with the Fulham Road on Church Street? I mean, you designed it, but I think consultation was kind of ready, but it's been derailed by.
Yes, there's an email that will be coming to you tomorrow about and other councillors about that and the interrelationship between that and Douglas Street. I think probably the answer is going to be a meeting with Stanley and Caulfield councillors to discuss to agree what the way forward is. Yeah, but we've got a scheme we think we can deliver for Fulham Road, Old Church Street. It's just what that then includes elsewhere on the network. There are some kind of choices to be made. But sorry, I'm saying a bit kind of.
But clearly, Fulham Road is one of the areas where we do have a noticeable number of casualties, and that's that particular crossing. I know I don't know much about.
I think the main reason for wanting to do that junction was because it was the last one that doesn't have any agreement
and residents.
It's not on the top 10 list, is it? But I was trying to think most of the top 10 are actually TfL.
It's not on the top 10 for casualties. It's on the top.
Sorry,
it's on one of the yeah. It's on page 44.
On our
programs.
But I think the answer is that we for further conversations with Caulfield and Standing councils because there are other possible schemes that would be precluded by its introduction, which is in no way reason not to do it. It's a conversation to have in order to help prioritize.
Yeah, just so we know what we're going into. Yeah.
I just want to make one observation, which is that as a cyclist, one of the most important things we do for cyclists is maintain a great road surface here.
Yes.
It makes a huge difference not having to swirl potholes. And then I just wanted to ask officers about those signs, how effective those signs showing your speed are. Because I think in that corridor from on Kensington Road, one of the problems is you go to cross the road, you're expecting vehicles to be at 20. They're really very often not at 20 because the road opens up and they speed up. Are those signs effective? And if so, is that the sort of place that we might put them? Just to slow traffic down without having a speed camera.
Drivers tell us that they're effective in moderating their own behaviour when it's a situation where they were unthinkingly going over the speed limit. But certainly when we have put them in, when we've installed them, the plan was to just rotate them because the literature suggests that actually they lose their value because it's all based on that. That's all based on the psychology of drivers realizing that they weren't going to get any kind of punishment, and therefore they could ignore it after a little while. But I don't know if that is the only reason why they work. I think it is part of just a kind of useful kind of corrective to say go a bit past there. And certainly no councillor who has asked for a speed indicator device has ever been pleased when we suggested we might then come to remove it. Because they certainly feel that they're still having an enduring benefit.
Good. Well, thank you. Thank you very good ask. I know to move on.
My road question to TfL.
It
takes a moment, if I may.
Go on then.
Because they could answer the question
quickly. No supplementary.
No supplementary. No. You probably heard Andrew Hatch speaking about speed cameras. I'm not quite sure because I thought enforcement police. My question actually is, he was talking about certain things can be done through the council. What I was thinking is, on a red route, like TfL route, if residents complain about cars allegedly going way above 20 miles an hour, could we get a speed indication device installed if we ask you?
We have provided a speed indicator device to be installed on a TfL road, on Redcliffe Gardens, for example. On Redcliffe Gardens, and I think it's all that on Warwick Gardens, there might have been one.
So it could be done, so we can
be done, there's a precedent for it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, funding is.
Because it was unclear to me.
Okay,
what he was saying.
No,
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much, Johnny, Caroline, Mark. You're now sit down. Sorry, you've had a long night, but I'm afraid TfL was always a long discussion, and we had the extra paper in. But very grateful for your time. Right, as a committee, we've got one more decision to make, which is on the work programme. So we need to. We can't find our successors for the next year. But because of prep time needed for the next committee is helpful for us to give the officers a steer on what to prepare for the first meeting. So there is a list of 3 suggested topics. Now, if it was this committee and experience committee, I would be quite happy to take 2 subjects. But because the new committee will they be constituting themselves, it's the first one of the year, there'll be new councillors, newly elected councillors, maybe all of them, of course, and they will have a work programme to discuss, which is a major item in the first meeting of the council term, in the first meeting of the year. But the suggestion was to have one other 3 options, because the markets plan, how's it working ahead of its renewal in 2027, one option. Scrutiny of noise and nuisance performance as another option, or scrutiny of licensing enforcement as another option. They're all standalone items that don't really fit into a themed meeting that might happen later in the year. They don't fit with transport and planning, for example. So over to you to give us your thoughts on what you think might be the one that you would go for, and I'll go around the room to my.
Yeah, so I don't know enough about licensing enforcement to actually say how we want it. So I'm actually quite interested because when I don't know enough, it makes me more interested to find out about it. The second one you mentioned was noise and nuisance. That's always fascinating because and such a big challenge. And I think if we haven't done a report on it recently, we should investigate it because it's a very tough thing. And also, there's people have a different understanding of what council can do and what environmental rules they're working under. So I definitely be for those two.
You're voting for 2. Okay, that's fine. And well, what's your thoughts?
If I was to rank these 3 in preference, I would say noise and nuisance 1, licensing enforcement 2, and the market plan 3.
I second that.
Yeah.
So
That's the way to answer it.
That's another way of doing it. Yes, well, I don't know what the electoral system that is, but anyway, I understand it. Dory, what's your thought?
It's a good point, but I really must point out, I think this licensing enforcement includes to some extent noise and nuisance because a lot of complaints about licensed premises is noise and nuisance. Therefore, I'm not sure you can really separate them. They overlap substantially. They don't completely overlap. They're not congruent, but they overlap a lot. So I think I would put those 2 together. Markets plan sounds good, but maybe the noise and nuisance irritates residents to no end. So that and which means licensing enforcement, those 2 together.
To putting them together into, I'm not sure that would actually work, but this is new. But yes, I take the point. But yes, okay. And Tim, what's your thought?
Have to follow the community side, so those 2 absolutely fine.
Right. I think we've got regardless of what I might think, I think we've got a plurality of noise and nuisance as the subject to put forward to find our success.
Can I just mention one thing? I
don't disagree with it. I just
Okay. I was actually in Portobello Market the other day, and it seemed like there were hardly any market stalls, and it was a market stall day. It just like. I don't know if there's less or what. Anyway, just as by. I
mean, this has been. I mean, to be honest, these 3 have all been on my list for each year. It's just that in picking out a standalone subject for the first meeting. I mean, there's no reason why all of these can't be done during the next year by the successor committee. And given that it's now 10 to 9, my chances of being re-elected as chair are probably completely blind because I've done. So let's propose that we, for the first meeting, that we have noise and nuisance performances, but then ask for a paper on that. The first meeting, and of course the new committee chair may completely change that. Though it happens through me, I won't. But that we'll leave it at that. And then that brings us to the end of the year and the end of the council year. I want to thank you for your service in the committee, to you standing down definitely won't be returning. So thank you for your service in the council, and thank you for everybody else for being a great committee this year. And thank you to our officers, to James and Tommy, for your excellent support during the year, backed up by Jackie and well, Andrew's just here to represent the many witnesses we've had over the years, But thank you all and good night.
Thank you.
And well done, Chair. Control.
Thank you.
Before 9 o'clock.
It's the last line.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well done.
Yeah.